I think Tampa will take both games in Tampa to start the series, and then Montreal will win 2 games in Montreal. But then Tampa will win the next one, and then Montreal will win the last 2. I think Montreal will do the same thing the Bruins did. They'll lose all their games on the road until the last one, the one that matters, happens, and they'll take home the cup. What are your predictions?
Suns have the best backcourt duo.
Yeah, so we've already talked about Burrow a lot, especially how he's influenced the Bengals organization to do some questionable things.
A great job from the Islanders to rebound off that and force a Game 7 with Bellavide's game-winning goal in overtime in Game 6.
We don't talk about the 2010s because the 2010s had the Astros, and if the Astros didn't happen, the Yankees would have won in 2017 over the Dodgers.
I'm going to say it's during the Week 17 game after the Cowboys have clinched the division, so we just put Ben DiNucci in.
Vegas was really outplayed the last 3 games of this series, and they did not seem like they wanted it as much as Montreal did.
And then the Oilers versus the Jets. Jets haven't been playing well. Oilers, you got a great offense with Connor McDavid. So I have them sweeping them.
Yeah, well, I don't think you heard my point. The San Francisco Giants have 3 more in the 2010s than the Rangers have in their entire history. So, yeah.
It's hard to get back and to get back-to-back wins. And I don't see the Lightning doing it here, so I have them losing to the Hurricanes in 6.
DeAndre Ayton, I think, will step up in this series and shut down Jokic enough for this to work out for them.
He was close to Frank Reich, and they want Frank Reich back, so that's what they got. It's their discount Frank Reich in Eagles' eyes.
Kaprizov and the rest of this crew, Jordan Greenway, who doesn't get enough props, he definitely is somebody who needs to be mentioned more.
What would you have said if I bet you $100 at the end of the round robin and start of the playoffs that the Stars would be in the Stanley Cup playoffs or Stanley Cup finals?
Hi, this is Julie Dobbs. You're listening to Outsiders Opinions with Kevin and Austin.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to our NFL Opinions of the Week. Today we'll be talking about what would lead us to fire a coach or what constitutes firing a coach in the NFL without any other circumstances. So for me, it would depend on a couple of things. But usually if I want to go by general, it's probably 3 years. 3 to 4. I think 2 is just a little bit too short. But we'll just start there. What's your base?
It depends. Every situation could be different, but in normal circumstances, my rule of thumb is always 3. The first year, you definitely can't fire him because he just got his first draft class in. He's just hiring his coaches. They all have to get assimilated to the offense, to the defense, with your players and all that. Second year, there should be some growth. If not, I would start to become worried, but still not fire. But third year, I'd have to see significant growth if there wasn't already growth in this second year. And if I didn't see that, I would make a move. But I definitely think that sometimes people make a move too fast and fire way too early.
Yeah, I agree. 3 is probably close. Maybe 4, depending on what happened in the third season. Like if they end on a positive note, I'm just going to let it continue for a little bit. Maybe we can come up with, say, some red flags with coaching, or what do you want to say before?
Yeah, let's do that. Red flags. So my first red flag would be a disagreement between him and the quarterback. The quarterback coach relationship has to be one that is positive. Even with Bill Belichick, a defensive head coach, always had at least a good relationship with Tom Brady. People like to paint it as something that it wasn't, but they always had a lot of mutual respect for each other. And if that's not the case, I feel like that could be a huge red flag. If the quarterback disagrees with what the coach is doing, offensive or defensive, it doesn't really matter, or just how he's teaching the team, coaching the team, pushing the players to do a certain thing that they shouldn't be doing, or vice versa, I do think that is a huge red flag.
Yeah, I would agree with that red flag. Mine is probably very similar to that. If he's lost the locker room, like my example is Urban Meyer when he had the incident with staying in Ohio and not flying back with the team and what happened on there. what happened while he was there, the team would make jokes. I heard rumors that the team would make jokes about it. If that's happening and the team just does not respect the coach, I say you got to fire the coach because you need someone that the team respects and that they'll listen to. So that's my red flag. And then what else you got?
I'll give one more. If the coach seems complacent, if he's okay with just barely making the playoffs, or if he's okay with just some barely improvement, not taking any risks when risks need to be taken. Obviously, like last year in the Chargers versus Raiders game, we saw some crazy plays, but those were all in the mind of trying to win the game. And so, as long as he can make appropriate sacrifices and risks when necessary, I'm cool with that. But if he's way too complacent, never takes a risk ever, whether it be signing, whether it be playing a certain player, whether it be uh, deciding this guy's going to start for us, or anything else, draft pick or otherwise, if he's never going to take any risks, I do think that's a red flag because you never get somewhere safely. You're not going to win a championship by taking no risks.
Yeah, I think you and I would disagree on like what is too much of a risk, but I do agree some risks. Sometimes you have to go for it on fourth. Sometimes you gotta go for it too. Sometimes you go for it instead of kicking a field goal. Those are just some scenarios. I'll say one more red flag. It's in between the seasons. It's if they can't figure out what happened that they need to work on, if there's not an arrow trending up, then I would get worried and I consider him firing him before year three and what they do in year three. But if it goes up and then it goes down in year two, I would start getting worried. Okay, what's going to happen in year three? But if it goes up in year three, then I maybe give him a fourth year.
That reminded me of a really good one that I think is probably the most important one: accountability. If the coach purely blames other coaches, or purely blames a side of a ball, or purely blames a one player or a group of players, that's a huge red flag, and I would consider firing immediately, even if we're having a relatively good season. If he just throws our quarterback, who's had a good season, throws 4 picks, has a terrible game, and he says, "We lost because of the quarterback," I would have a lot of trouble with that because the coaches called the plays, and the wide receiver had to go get the ball, and the O line had to block, and the running back had to pick up the blitz, and like not everything's going to be perfect every time. And I am really against blaming one player or one coach or one play for the reason why any team loses a game. And if the coach can't take any accountability for what he's done, I would say that's a huge major red flag and probably the biggest red flag for me.
I agree. That is a very important red flag. The example that pops in my mind is Vic Fangio. When like I think he already knew he was getting fired, but he was like, "Well, look at the other teams in the AFC West. Like that's why they're winning." Well, no, that's not why they're winning. That's a reason why they're winning and why they may go far in the playoffs. But it is also on you not defending them properly and not giving Drew Lock um, success opportunities for him to excel. But he wasn't wrong, but you can't really say it. And then one thing that popped into my mind was also Bruce Arians when they asked him about James Winston and like upgrading QB. He's like, well, if I can win with this one, then I can win with another one, which is borderline because he stayed coach and then
I feel like he knew that Jameis Winston was out, so he didn't feel like he was part of the team anymore. But I do understand what you're saying. It does,
it's
uh,
on the border of
yeah, yeah, yeah. But
putting him
I
in
think one
consideration.
thing we should do is we should probably, I want to do this. Who is the who has the hottest chair right now in each conference? So I'll go AFC first. Hottest seat. I would say Kevin Stefanski has a hot seat if the Browns fall off the map. If Deshaun Watson does not work, this will be his third season. And even though they did do well with Baker in the playoffs the year before last, if this season they do terrible and Deshaun Watson does not work out and Amari Cooper does not work out and they miss the playoffs with this group of guys, I think he probably has the hottest or one of the hottest seats in the conference.
Okay. So you said your AFC. Do you want me to go with my AFC?
Yeah.
So
Or
is
you can go
this
NFC if
depending?
you don't have one, but yeah.
Well, thinking of AFC, but I want like a clarifying question. Is this who has a hot seat just because of like the situation they're in, or who I would personally have a hot seat for?
Do based on what you think would happen. That's what I did
Okay.
mine.
Okay. I feel Kevin Stefanski is a good choice as well. I'm trying to think AFC. Um, I'll say NFC, and then while you say your NFC one, I'll say my AFC because NFC is definitely Coach McCarthy for the Cowboys because of like Jerry Jones' situation, and it would be year 3 of Mike McCarthy, and just what happened last season because the Cowboys looked good in my opinion, and I felt they should have won that game, but they didn't for some reason. And now, given what they lost this past offseason, I think it's going to be interesting to do. But if they don't if they don't make the playoffs, or if they get kicked out in the first round of the playoffs, I feel McCarthy is gone.
My NFC, I was gonna go McCarthy, but I don't want to do the same as you, so I'm gonna go Ron Rivera. If Washington does bad this season again after trading Carson Wentz or trading for Carson Wentz, I think he'd have an incredibly hot seat. And like I like Ron Rivera as a coach, but we both thought that they were going to win the division last year. Well, I did think the Cowboys are going to be good and make the playoffs like I predicted. I thought Washington was going to be a better team. I really liked how that defense was built. And if this year they miss the playoffs again, or if they're not close, if they're fourth or third in the division and they're not really all that close to making it, I think Ron Rivera will probably get moved off from.
That's very true. I can definitely see that happening. AFC teams. So I do agree with your Browns. I'm curious what you think of mine. I almost want to say Colts if they don't make the playoffs.
Frank Reich.
Frank Reich or the Chargers, even though I think it'd be a little bit too early.
No, I don't think the Chargers. I agree more with your Colts. I don't think that there's no way, unless they literally lose every game, which they're not going to. I find it very hard for them to fire.
Yeah, that's why I think it'd be a little bit too early, but I wouldn't be too surprised if the Chargers.
They would have to have a terrible season because they're already in a really
I
hard division. They're already in a really hard division. What if the Broncos, Chiefs, and Raiders are all insane with their new parts and they just miss the playoffs barely? I don't think missing the playoffs constitutes him getting fired. They're in an insanely hard division. Their record will be affected by the fact that they're going against Devontae Adams, Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Travis Kelce, Josh Jacobs, Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow, all these guys in the same division. I do think that'll affect them. And if they miss the playoffs barely and have a good season and Justin Herbert gets better and the team continues to improve otherwise and they barely miss the playoffs, I don't think that constitutes him. Nathaniel Hackett, I believe his name is, getting fired.
Hackett is Broncos.
Is that Eagles?
No, Hackett is Broncos. Chargers
Oh
is
yeah,
the
I always
defensive
get that
coordinator for
mixed
1
up.
year.
I don't know why I did that last time.
It is Brandon Staley. I always
That's
forget him.
right.
I just know he was the defensive coordinator for 1 year.
I got that wrong
with the
again.
Rams.
I did that last time. I said it was Nathaniel Hackett, even though it's not. Yeah, but I don't think that would constitute even close. I wouldn't even consider firing Brandon Staley if they miss the playoffs by the standards of what I just said, because they're in an incredibly hard division. But I do have to see improvement, but I don't have to see them make the playoffs for me to be, oh no, we need to cut everything. And what if the Browns are insane with Deshaun Watson? The AFC is stacked right now. If they
Yeah,
miss the playoffs, I don't think that constitutes a firing. But the
with what
Colts,
you were
yes.
talking about, I could maybe see them do it. But Colts, I could definitely see more if they miss the playoffs in general. I could see them going like, yeah,
Because
I'd probably
they've
disagree with it.
the past couple years they've had these wildish expectations of at least making an AFC championship game, and they just struggled. And they have the third best running back in the league, in my opinion. Uh, and they have to make a move while he's still on a cheaper contract. And while I would still sign him back, I know you don't like signing running backs again, but Jonathan Taylor is just that guy. But they have to make a move now, and they're picking up a lot of these guys, and they've made a lot of signings, and they made what I think are good draft picks. They still have T.Y. Hilton. Matt Ryan is a good quarterback. if they miss this season, yeah, I do think behind Kevin Stefanski, he'd have the highest chance to get
Yeah, I would
fired.
agree with that. With Frank Reich, we talk about trading for QBs. He traded for Wentz. Now they traded for Matt Ryan. Sometimes he's just had a lot like a circling door um, with the QB. And it just hasn't worked out unless it works out with Ryan, then he gets another year. But I think any final thoughts for head coaches? All right. That is it. And we'll be talking to you next week for NFL on our NFL opinions of the week. Make sure to check out our other opinions of the week. And thank you so much for listening to Outsiders Opinions.